call the meeting to order just a moment. Okay. First order of business is flag salute. Nancy, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Ehrenkrams,
Here.
Councilmember Warren,
Here.
Councilmember Zeitz,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Haggerty,
Here.
Mayor Brown.
Here. Next item of business is approval of the agenda. Any comments from the council? Motions to approve.
Well, other than we need to add public comments.
That's on. Well, the public comments are for items that are not on the agenda. We'll have public comments related to the business item as after the presentation, if that's acceptable to everyone.
Yeah, that's fine, so we'll just add it.
So do we have any, without objection to that minor modification to the agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Second. Moving second to approve the agenda, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Agenda's been approved. Next order of business is public comments on any item that's not on the agenda. We will allow you to have comments on the agenda item after the presentation is made. So this is basically for things that are not agendized. Is there anybody that's requested to speak on issues other than what's on the agenda?
I have none.
Anybody want to say anything before we move on? Okay, moving on to business items. Review ESCI cost of services fire study and approve moving forward with option 1, 2A, 2B, or other option not presented in this report. First thing I'd like to do is have a presentation on the cost of fire services study, and I'd request that people take notes, that we not turn this into a free-for-all at this time in terms of going back and forth with questions. There will be an opportunity to ask questions, preferably addressed to the council, after the presentation is made, but we'll hope that he can make his entire presentation without being interrupted too many times by too many people. That's acceptable? Chairman?
Good evening. I would like to begin the presentation of our project. First off, I'd like to thank the council members and the staff of Canyon Lake for their help and information related to this project. It was very helpful to get the kind of data that we used. It's a very short-term project. Normally, these type projects are 120, 150, 180-day projects. So we shrunk that down pretty good, and it was with the help of staff and council that made that happen. My voice is a little bit messed up tonight because I've got a touch of pneumonia, honestly. I've been in bed for 3 days, but we'll get through this. So I'm going to move through these slides. You all have the report. You've had a chance to look through it. The presentation is very high altitude. And at the end of my presentation, if the council has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Can the people in the back see this? Why don't you move over here where you can see it, because I think we start moving it, we just hear the equipment. I think you can see it, Ken. Thank you.
Our process was to take a baseline evaluation and measurement, and to validate the city-provided data. All of the data that we reviewed and analyzed was provided by the city. There was quite a bit of information to go over and review, and it was helpful. After we collated all the information, we researched and analyzed it, our ESAI team, and then developed options and recommendations to go forward. The report is separated into different sections. The first part is the background. That background gives a little bit of a snapshot of kind of the historical perspective of where we started and kind of where we ended up today. There were a series of project assumptions, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later. Myself and city staff worked on those assumptions for us to build the options presented. We needed to have a series of assumptions to form a foundation to go forward on that. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. There's a service delivery section that analyzes the computer dispatch data and travel times and how fire and EMS resources move around the city. There's a fiscal analysis, which is a current snapshot of fiscal conditions in Canyon Lake today relative to fire protection. We present a series of fire protection options. There are 3 options presented: 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. I'll get into that in a minute. And then a wrap-up section on the financial impacts of those particular options in a composite. Some of the project assumptions, our scope of work was strictly to review and validate city-provided data to bring forth recommendations for consideration to maintain fire protection. I'm going to keep kind of going back to the city-provided data statement because in a normal feasibility study, we will go outside of the city into the region to try to extract more data. But of course, we couldn't do that this time. We know why. Staffing design and staffing modeling, foundational pieces were primarily city-provided data. These were staffing designs that have been worked on over the last 6 to 8 to 12 months. And we picked them up and kind of took them from there. Salary and benefits. That again is information that was resident within city-provided data, and a lot of the budget modeling that city manager and the former interim fire chief had done. Fire communications, I put that bullet in there. One of the things that we talked about if we start our own fire department here is how we're going to do fire communications. And as an example of an assumption, we assume that the fire communications cost us $100,000 a year. That's what CAL FIRE has indicated that would cost if we wanted to contract that service. Fleet and facilities, hazmat, special resource costs, and then startup costs. The startup costs we can get into a little bit later if there's any questions. There are a number of startups in there that we injected into these models that were not considered in the city data, but we thought it was important to bring those to light within the financial modeling because they are real, and some of them are unknown even to this day. Service delivery. This service delivery is, when we talk about service delivery, we talk about how the service is delivered within the community. How many runs, how quick they're getting there, how many units are running, how many times a year, how they're distributed, and how they're performing relative to industry benchmarks and standards of practice that we see in fire departments across the country. That chart there might be kind of hard for some folks to see in the audience. It basically shows the last 3 years of total responses within Canyon Lake. 2013, 566 calls, 600, almost 700 calls. A little more than that, 214, and just about 600 calls in 215. And you can see in the blue is EMS calls. More than 90% of our work is EMS in EMS world today. Very few fires. It's a relatively new city, new homes, alarm systems, fire protection systems. A lot of people staying home during the day, so the human activity will catch fires and be able to call them over quick. Far different than a urban inner city kind of situation.
If I may request, I believe that chart we have seen in this packet someplace.
Yes.
Is there any way you could reference the page number?
Page 15. Page
50.
50?
15 and
15. Is that eight? Up or like that? Yeah, page 15. The next slide is a slide of geographical service demand for the last 2 years, and it's a graduation of color. High density, moderate density, and low density services. So most of our service demand that we see in Canyon Lake are where you see the red along Railroad Canyon, and then the yellow, and then the green is a lesser demand.
Sorry to bother you again,
That's okay.
but looking through my packet, page 15 on the agenda appears to be different than page 15 that's on this. My question is, which does the public have? Do they have the agenda packet?
I don't know what they have.
they're going to have.
It's 22, it's page 22.
So it'll actually be page
Now we're on 24.
Oh, okay, yeah.
24, or, 22 for the former, 24 for this one.
So, since the public has the agenda packet, would you please refer to
I'll see if I can.
in the agenda packet?
This is page 7. Are you going to be skipping, you're not going to be going to?
I'm not going through every single page. We'll be here pretty much all night.
All right.
It shows page 16 on my,
17.
17 or 24, 917.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
The agenda packet, I believe, is page 24, so if somebody, if you guys can try to reference the page number.
Yeah, I just gave you the agenda packet.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, that's fine. Let's see if I can't track it better for us here. Yeah, page 24. Okay. The next slide is resource distribution. And this shows, I'm going to try to get the right page so you know what we're referring to.
26.
19,
26, I believe.
26.
Page 26, okay. And what this shows is the resource distribution and where the stations are. Right here we have the red dots are the stations. And it's a little harder to see on the screen, but you can see it on your hard copies. It displays a 4-minute and 8-minute travel time in color codes. So what it demonstrates to you is where these fire stations are located, how fast the fire station can a fire unit can travel in travel time. When I say 4-minute travel time, that's just the movement of the fire resource. It's not the total response time. Industry standards put 1 minute for dispatch time, 1 minute for turnout time, which is what the men and women get on their gear, and 4 minutes of travel time. That's a goal. It's not always met, but that's a goal. But this slide here shows you that resources located in those 4 particular fire stations can pretty much have a 4-minute travel time to almost anywhere in Canyon Lake. Can you help me, Kirsten?
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm sorry. The next slide is response performance,
32.
Yes, 32.
page 32. And I want to focus in on the top figure 1. And this text box represents response time when Station 60 was in service. And if you look at the bottom where it says response time, I'm gonna point to it here so there's no confusion. We look at this text box here, sorry if I'm looking. Response time when 60 was in service was roughly 8 minutes and 26 seconds, 90% of the time. The next figure is when Station 60 is out of service from October 2015 to present. And you can see the response time at the 90th percentile has gone up to 11 minutes and 36 seconds. So the closure of Station 60 has a marked effect on the response performance within the city. The last box at the bottom shows the travel time in less than 5 minutes, both during 60 was open and after it was closed. And let me move over here. When it was open, response time was less than, travel time was less than 5 minutes, more than 82% of the time. After the closure, travel time less than 5 minutes drastically dropped to 65%. So it just proves that that resource being out of there made a significant difference in the level of service provided to the community.
We're searching.
That's okay.
Oh, there we go, page 28.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Okay.
28.
This table shows the percentage of service demand within 4 minutes of travel time or less. And Station 60, Station 5, and Station 94, you can see the percentages at 60%, 7%, and 52%. With Station 5 and 94 serving the community, demand within 4 minutes travel time in the city is 54%. But with 60 in play, along with 5 and 94, because 5 and 94 are covering us when 60 was open before 60 closed, you can see it drastically raises up to 96%. So the point being is that fire station in play and in service makes a significant difference in the service levels within the community. I'd like to move to financial analysis and pretty much a snapshot of forecast revenue trends.
Page 38.
Thank you. This particular chart demonstrates the revenue trend, the forecasted revenue from present through 2023. The blue columns are the UUT, utility users tax, that was recently passed. And then in 2021, halfway through the budget year, the UUT sunsets. However, if the UUT was reauthorized, you can see the orange dotted line shows that progression. And I'm not probably mentioning the obvious, but I'm going to talk a lot about the UUT and the absolute importance of the UUT extension or reauthorization, how important that is going forward to make any option that we present tonight a viable option.
Okay, so this one is page 35 for council, page 43 for the public.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Page 36
This particular chart shows the historic and current operating surplus and deficit relative to the expenses and revenues with fire protection. The green bars that drop down below the zero line show the operating deficit, and then in years 15, 16, 14, 15, 15, 16, you can see the upward trend in revenue, and that's because of the UUT solving that problem. Now I'm going to move into the options. I kind of skipped through that financial piece, but like I said, I know council's aware, the UUT is really or other revenue streams, are the lifeline for continued fire protection at the service level that we're talking about with these options. Without a UUT, without some replacement revenue, there's not a single option that we're going to talk about tonight that can survive. So, option one is to, are we good on page numbers?
Page 47 for the public, 40 for council.
47 and 40.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Option one is to reestablish a contract with CAL FIRE and restore services at Station 60 with their full-time staffing. That includes advanced life support paramedic services. That organizational chart there is a depiction of 3 shifts representing the 3 crews that will be working at Station 60 as it was before. There's a battalion chief and a division chief, and I didn't include all of the other CAL FIRE positions in this chart. I just kept it a little more simplified for us here. And I'm going to move to the next page, which I listed a series of option one main characteristics.
That's going to be page 48 for the public, 41 for council.
Thanks. So the main characteristics of option one are Station 60 opens full-time staff with paramedics. You have improved response times in the city, including Longhorn, which at this moment is suffering a little bit of response time and travel times. Mutual aid, automatic aid, and other specialized resources are all in place. I'm going to land on automatic and mutual aid here a little bit later. That's a real key component. Training, logistics, overtime management, fleet replacement budgeting, EMS quality assurance programs, and all the other ancillary pieces that it takes to maintain and operate a fire department are all resident with CAL FIRE. There are no startup costs to the city. One benefit might be that longer-term CAL FIRE contracts make it easier for budget planning, although it's a challenge for the city to meet annual increased costs. And we show that in the financials in a minute. There is a risk that the UUT will not be continued beyond 2020. And this option, based on the UUT as it is today, cannot sustain past 2020. Moving to a chart now.
Page 49 for the public, 42 for council.
And what we've done here is shown in a composite the operating surplus deficit if the UUT was to sunset. And we took 2 different expenses on the CAL FIRE option, a high and a low, or a high and a low medium. The high deficit, or the high expense, is the red dotted line on the top. That's a 12.7% annual increase on CAL FIRE's contracts. The blue dotted line is calculated at low medium. That's a 6% increase in CAL FIRE contracts. We don't know what they're going to be. We've seen it historically, but we wanted to show that there are some differences there. And then the total revenue in green is the UUT, and then you see in 2021 it starts to go away from the blue and the red dotted lines, and deficits start to occur. So it's just another demonstration of the UUT issue. Up until fiscal year 1920 and half of 2021, we're meeting that low threshold 6% with CAL FIRE. But then it goes away.
And page 52 for the public and 45 for council.
Option 2, there are 2 options within option 2. Both of them are identical in structure. The main difference in the 2 options, in 2A and 2B, are benefits. 2A is a CalPERS benefit, and 2B is a city-defined contribution plan. Both of those numbers for CalPERS benefits and defined contribution benefits were given to us in the city-provided data, and I'm going to get into that just a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit more about that, the benefit side. But basically what we end up with, option 2 is fire chief and assistant chief. Those are 2 full-time positions. This is a full-time fire department. These are hired people, hired firefighters. We have a fire chief and assistant chief, and we have 3 shifts with a captain, an engineer, and firefighter on each of the shifts, and then 2 administrative assistants. Question might be, why 2 administrative assistants? Well, that's the city-provided data we got from the manager when she's here. That's what we went with. So there are some things in here where we can change some inputs. The administrative assistance is one, and the city-defined contribution is another one that can be changed as far as the injection of those inputs go, of cost. Now, this fire department is a BLS, it's basic life support, non-paramedic. I'm going to show you some cost factors on what we want to do if we want to talk about ALS. But ALS is decidedly more expensive to run, obviously, and I'll show you that in a minute. The main characteristics.
Page 53 for the public and 46 for council.
The main characteristics.
53.
Our Station 60 opens with full-time, full-staffed, BLS level, that's basic life support, non-paramedic, where we would have to lean on the paramedic services provided by AMR. Response times in the city would improve. Mutual aid and automatic aid will be 2 components that can be negotiated with our neighbors. There's an option for that. All the training, logistics, overtime, fleet replacement budgeting, quality assurance, startup costs, and all the other ancillary pieces would be responsibility of the city. The city would create its own identity with its own fire department. To start a fire department like this is a 12 to 18 month process. We think it's possible to have a fire department within 12 months with an aggressive plan and an aggressive approach. But there are a number of things that contribute to that timeline. And so we build a little bit extra time in there for that 12 to 18 months. It's something that can't be done overnight. The city has control over the service levels, over the budget, and the fire department activities. There's a risk that the UUT will not be continued past 2020. Again, that's another serious risk. And at past 2020, this particular option cannot sustain. One of the points we make is that employee recruitment and retention may be an issue because of the size of the department. There's little vertical career advancement opportunities. This would probably, in our estimation, be a place where people could start their careers and probably move on because they want to seek other advancement. Maybe not, but that's what we see. And there's 2 benefit models, CalPERS in Model 2A and City Defined in Model 2B. And I'm going to move on to the next chart that can kind of show that. We're actually 2 charts away.
So 2A, so page
So on this chart, what we have is the red line represents total revenue with the UUT sunsetting. The dark blue line, solid blue line, is total expenses with basic life support. That's the non-ALS, non-paramedic. And then what we did is we added on an ALS or a paramedic input for costs. The option 2A and 2B do not present a paramedic option per se, but we injected it in the financial analysis so you could have an idea what it looks like financially. And you can see it's a bit higher. I don't have charts for 2A and 2B, but I'm going to explain that 2A, which you see in front of you, has the CalPERS input, which is about 27.89% benefit salary. The 2B is the city-defined contribution, which is 32.28% benefit injection. And you say, well, CalPERS is always more expensive. Why is it cheaper now? And the reason is that city-defined contribution was a number that we worked on and put into that particular data early on when I first met with Ariel and the team. That particular defined contribution is something that you could decide to do however you wanted to make it as attractive as you wanted to attract employees. So that number there is I wouldn't call it arbitrary, but it's something that can be manipulated and changed as you decide. Does that make sense? And then this is a really interesting slide. This is option 2A with the UUT extended.
62 for the public and 55 for council.
And so in option 2A with the UUT extended, absent the ALS piece right now, which is the blue dotted line, if we just do a BLS service, the solid blue line is your cost, and the red line is your revenue. We're meeting revenue all the way out with the extension of the UUT. So we're meeting demand with that extension, with this particular model. Okay.
That was 2B.
That's 2A or 2B. Yeah. 2B is just a little bit more expensive than 2A only because of that injection of that input. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move to option 3.
Page 65 for the public and 58 for council.
Okay, option 3 is similar to option 2, A and B, in that it is a new city fire department. The concept is to use part-time employees. This was an early concept brought some time ago, I believe, with the interim chief during that period of time. It was a concept of a new city fire department, a staffed open fire station, 3 shifts, operating unit, basic life support level, using part-time people. And what I mean by part-time is people off duty, firefighters, men and women that work in the region that work on their time off for Canyon Lake. And let me move to these characteristics.
I'm sorry, page 66 for the public and 59 for council.
There are a couple issues with this particular option, but we end up with Station 60 open. It's full-time staffed. It's non-paramedic. Again, we have to lean on AMR for our paramedic services. The response times in the city would improve with a single resource. Automatic aid is not possible from CAL FIRE with this option. For some in the audience that may not know what automatic gate is, I know some do. An automatic gate is sharing resources across city lines, across agency lines. And in many cities and many regions in Orange County where I worked, 20, 30 cities, the property lines are just pretty much erased and closest engine goes, no matter where it is. In this particular scenario, CAL FIRE has indicated in writing that because it's not a like resource, in other words, a part-time staffed resource, and I don't mean part-time as in volunteer station dark, I mean using part-time people, they will not engage in automatic gate. And that's critical because we're leaning on Station 5 and Station 94 to help the south and eastern part of the city. Mutual aid requests to CAL FIRE would be considered and only a resource provided if available. That was the terminology they used. I don't exactly know what that means beyond that, but I know I heard about when we did the declaration that we have resources coming from Hammett, OES rigs coming from quite a ways away, because maybe they were available at that time. So in our opinion, that option 3 is the service level is really low. It's much lower than any of the options we previously discussed. Training, logistics, overtime, startup costs, all that become part of the city. Again, another 12 to 18 month timeline to start a fire department. And I moved to page 2 on those characteristics, Kirsten.
It's all between those pages 65 and 66.
Okay. The city has control over its service level and budget and all activities. Again, we talked about the UUT not being extended, and that cannot, even this option cannot sustain past 2020. Recruitment and retention. In other documentation, CAL FIRE has indicated that their staff may not be or are precluded to work for other fire agencies in this particular fashion because it goes against an internal policy called incompatibilities, and it's an appendix in the back of your report that states that. So not only will they not play with automatic aid, but now our folks that want to come and work for us here can't come and work for us because it threatens their job that's existing. Marietta, Hammett, Riverside, other city departments, I don't know what their policies are. That was beyond our scope to find that out. The startup costs for this particular option are higher. We calculated a cadre of approximately 30 different people, and that would be added costs for protective gear and different equipment for a cadre that large. One of the other keynotes is a potential increase in property losses. I know some of the firefighters in the audience here know something about something called 2 in, 2 out. It's an OSHA compliant regulation that we have a 3-person rig that shows up on the scene of a bedroom fire around the corner here. They can't operate inside a, quote, dangerous environment, and it's defined, without people outside to essentially rescue them if they were able to become incapacitated. So with a 3-person unit, you would basically be fighting fire from the outside, and with the, and you folks know because you live here, the highly, in my opinion, the highly technical nature of the structures, the lakefront, the geography, 3- and 4-story homes, just the tactical nature of fighting fire in Canyon Lake is really high, in my opinion. Where I worked 30 years in Garden Grove, everything's flat, maybe 2 stories, but not the geography up here. So we briefly looked at, there was a desire from council to look at a purely volunteer fire department. We briefly looked at it and felt that it did not even, it would be a lower level of service than what I've just explained with option 3. So we didn't go any further with that.
70 for public and page 63 for council.
And this is option 3's surplus deficit chart, which kind of you've already seen with the UUT sunsetting in 2021. And you can see we're meeting expenses rather well until we get to that UUT sunset time.
Same page 70.
Yeah, I'm going to move past this slide, Kirsten.
So page 72 for the public and 65 for council.
So I'm going to review the financial impact of all of the options on this particular slide. Option 1 is in purple, dotted, and you can see the high, that's the high calculation at 12.7%. The option 1 at 6% is the purple solid line. It still dips down in 2021, and 2A, 2B, and option 3. So again, I keep underlining the UUT situation. And the next slide.
Page 73 for the public and 66 for council.
And this is a slide that is exactly what we just looked at, only it's an extension of the UUT beyond 2020. Whereas even with the extension, option 1 on the high side, we end up into the red. But the remaining options are relatively close to breaking even on that. And then the next slide, I don't know if there's a page for that, because I did these together. And basically, I'll just walk up here. This is just a dual view of the two slides we just looked at. And it basically shows the sunset and then the extension of UUT relative to those costs for those different options. Next steps, and this isn't in there either. In our opinion, the next steps are that the elected officials and city staff should establish strategies to address and secure the long-term financial resources to support any of the options selected, if selected. We also believe that surveying the community members to determine service expectations and desired service levels would be important to gauge what the community expectations are. That's something that we normally do in a feasibility study that we were unable to do in this particular project. City staff and elected officials then determine a level of service commensurate with the community expectations for the city. Decision on an option going forward. And then we start working to our transition process, along with establishing clear and frequent communication strategies that keep the community informed of what's going on, so that you know what's happening. And that concludes my slides, and I'd be more than willing to answer any of your questions at this time.
At this point in time, I request we suspend Robert Rules of Order so we don't have to go through the motion process. Simply ask questions. Any discussion mode without objection. First, without objection, I requested that we suspend Robert's Rules of Order to the extent that we don't have to have a motion in order to have a discussion. Since this is a discussion item, we don't need a motion. And without objection? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have no objection because part of the thing that we have for this is that we're supposed to review it. That is the agenda item to review it. So discussing it is part of the review process, I believe. And then after that, possibly a motion.
Okay. At this point in time, I think let's just say that we can discuss it regardless of what the rules are. So first step would be comments or questions from council to the presenter, or city staff.
you like to have a chair to sit?
I'm
while
fine.
we're doing this?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I have a bunch of questions, I'm sure we all do. I'll ask a couple, then give somebody else a chance, and we'll come back.
Can't hear you.
It was on? Okay, that better?
There you go.
Okay. I had a couple of concerns. One was, well, you clarified to some extent when you said that our acting city manager had given you numbers for the PERS and retirement. In the investigating that we did, in every single case, it was clear to us that it would be cheaper to go with the city plan than with PERS. Everybody I've talked to, and I've talked to representatives in probably 7 or 8 cities over the past month, they all, same thing, that the thing that's killing them is PERS. And being able to control costs in that respect is the advantage of having your own fire department or going, again, not with PERS, but with a private plan. So I was very surprised to see that you showed PERS being less expensive, but you did say it was an arbitrary number that you picked. So I just want to make that clear that as far as I'm concerned, I don't have any problem with our being able to develop a fire department without PERS that would be less costly than the PERS. I'm curious, you picked 12.7% for the high end and 6% for the low end on the CAL FIRE if we stay with that contract. What did you base those numbers on? Where did you get those from?
Through discussions with staff, we were hearing numbers of 8, 10, 12%. And so what we did is our finance people basically just took kind of a range to show a high and a low medium.
Because I have
Those aren't-
6% for a long time.
Yeah, and those aren't numbers that came from CAL FIRE. Those aren't hard numbers. Those are just ranges that we picked to just demonstrate what it would look like when we projected those. And going back on the CalPERS city defined discussion, yeah, I had the same question when I got the modeling back from my finance folks. I'm like, there's something wrong here. CalPERS is always more expensive. And we went back through it, and it was the injection of that particular number, which is something that can be worked with as you design it.
Mm-hmm.
So that number can be brought back.
Yeah, I think that's very fixable. The reason I ask about the 12.7 is because I haven't seen 6% anywhere. The projection that I read was about 8 months ago that they put out a long-range projection was 8 to 11% or higher. It went up 17%, which is what precipitated our deciding that it clearly would not be sustainable. So that's why I was curious where you got those numbers. And maybe I'll ask one more. On it's on, well, my page 54, which is not the one that you all have. I got one of the original copies, so it's page 54 in the copy that you did. You show that the EMT, which is the basic, and then you show the ALS, which is with the paramedics. And then later you describe, earlier on page 52, you showed just a breakdown of the cost for paramedics, and it was $311,942. So I'm asking you, if we did you built that into the cost on the ALS projection, and it was not included in the ALS projection, is that correct?
Yeah, the ALS projection that you see on page 54 on the blue dotted line, that is the injection of that 311.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, those are ongoing. However, the startup costs a lot of them are unknown.
Yeah,
Those are
well,
one-time.
and also, I did quite a bit of research here many months ago on training. I met with a man in Sacramento who, they have a training company, and he was telling me, in fact, he gave me a brochure on all of the government paid-for offers for training, which would cost us nothing. And I also spoke with a gentleman about grants, and it seems there are quite a few grants out there for startup costs for equipment things. So those are unknowns, of course, that I know you didn't have time to look into that part of it, and I didn't expect you to, but I did want to interject that at this point, that it's not one of my greater concerns, because I think that could be minimalized. So, okay, I'll give somebody else a chance.
Council member comments or questions? No?
I have a number of them, but I'll just do one or two as Don did at this point. Just a question for you, Kevin. Should we as a council members be concerned if the fire response times increase from 9 minutes? If the response times increase to 15 minutes, should we be concerned?
Should you be concerned?
Mhm.
I think everybody wants as shorter response times as you can, but as an elected body, you need to, I think, communicate with the community and determine what their expectations are for service. If me and you live on a farm 100 miles in the middle of the desert, we might think same day is pretty darn good, right? But if I live in an urban center, I might want 6 minutes. I think that's a concern when you see the kind of movement in response times with 60 out of position as it is right now. To me, that's a concern. But I think that it starts with the measurement of what the community feels that they want, and then the elected body can decide after that.
Shouldn't we know as an elected body what the appropriate response time should be?
I would think, yeah, sure.
And what would that be?
Well, then the industry standards, that's, again, that's just a standard, it's a benchmark, is within 6 minutes arrival of the first arrival rig.
Okay.
That, I'm not saying that happens everywhere, every time, but that's the target goal.
Okay. On my page 12, your page 19, it says a broad discussion of advanced life support paramedic level cost of service is contained within the appendixes of this report. I looked at the appendixes and I could not find it.
What page are you on, Council?
Page 12 or 19, mine 12, their 19. It,
Oh, it's the second to the last bullet? Broad
Yes.
discussion?
right.
It's not in the appendices, sir, it's on page 52.
52, that's a broad discussion?
That's as broad as we can get with the data that was provided, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll wait for somebody else to. I have more, but I'm willing to yield some time to whoever wants to ask the next question.
Anybody want to jump in? Council? Okay, go ahead.
My questions also go to response times, and you said through most of the city. I'd like to know where your numbers came from, and where do you break it down? Longhorn's a long way away from 60 or...
In the travel time modeling that you see in your report, that is modeling that's done with our road networks at X speeds with our mapping team. That's how travel time's developed. And then it's married with computer dispatch data that we receive from CAL FIRE relative to the responses that have gone into those areas. So we can take a map, a GIS map, and prescribe a 35-mile-an-hour travel time speed and calculate the travel times. That's how they do that.
Council,
I have
questions?
I have lots of questions, but I don't want to take the
Yeah.
floor.
Let me jump in with one then.
Okay.
On looking at the cost for advanced paramedic services, I don't get how you can get to 271,000 for 4 people, assuming that's the delta over and above the cost for a basic firefighter.
That figure was injected at a 15% increase over a firefighter for paramedic certification pay.
Okay, 270, okay, if we're looking at 4 people, and I divide 271,000 by 4, or 280,000, say, make it a little easier, that's 70,000. Now, certainly, that person with benefit increases is not earning $70,000 more.
In that calculation is not only salary and benefit, there's also an overtime calculation injected in there as well.
Still, 70,000 makes no sense. There's no way that a paramedic, even with benefits, and you've got overtime built into the other calculation, and we should be looking at an extra $70,000 paramedic.
Cameron, is that for 3 medics, or is that for
That's for-
6, or the captain's medics as well?
That's for 3 paramedics.
Okay.
Yeah, but divide by 3, it still comes out to 70,000, because we've got 273,000.
Mr. Mayor, I can go back and check with my finance people on that, but that 15% bonus is regular salary, and that was assuming that 4 firefighters were paramedics. I'm sorry, Aaron, that was what I mean. I said 3, it's 4. We added a 4th one in case somebody was off vacation or sick or that. Okay.
280,000 divided by 4 is 70,000. Doesn't make sense.
Okay. I can't answer that question for you right now, so if you'd like, I can find a better answer for that for you later.
But, I'll defer other questions.
All right, sir. Allow me to take the floor, but on page 14 or 21 for the people out there is the Canyon Lake Fire Station map. It shows the distribution of CAL FIRE Riverside County facilities that are currently the first due fire stations for responses within the city of Canyon Lake. If we select option 1, this will remain, as I understand it in what you wrote. If we select option 2, will station 94 and 5 no longer be first due?
In option 2, which is a full-time fire department, in option 2, you still have the same automatic aid that you have with 60 open. So the answer to that question is yes.
Where do you get that information from?
CAL FIRE.
Okay, and you have a document that says that?
That, yes, in your appendix, I think it's appendix D.
Okay, would you read the first sentence of that that, or I can read it for you. It's on page 79 of ours. It's the bottom paragraph.
Go ahead, John.
Riverside County Fire, the question was fully staffed, 3-person, BLS engine, City of Canyon Lake Fire Department. I believe that's option 2, whether it's 2A or 2B. That's option 2 as I take it. Riverside County Fire will provide 1 engine on automatic aid to Canyon Lake for structure and wildland fires. Riverside County Fire would request Canyon Lake Fire to provide 1 engine to surrounding jurisdictions where the Canyon Lake Fire engine is second due. Riverside County Fire would consider all requests for mutual aid from Canyon Lake Fire and would provide a response if resources are available. As I recall, you made a comment when you talked about number 3. And number 3 is on the next page of that, and you said that we would not get mutual aid, we would have somewhere else in the county come to us because they said Riverside County would not provide automatic aid, and that Riverside County Fire would consider all requests for mutual aid from Canyon Lake and would provide a response if resources are available. That is the exact same sentence that's in 2. So if you're concerned about it in 3, why aren't you concerned about it in 2? It is the exact same sentence.
Taken out by itself, that is added to that, but it does go on
beginning part of that paragraph that addresses the automatic aid.
Right. In
But it
option,
doesn't say where it's coming from.
no, it doesn't.
So my question to you was, how do you know it's coming from 94 and 5?
I don't know that. I don't know
Okay.
that.
So we don't know that, and so that statement in 2 is not correct. That we will have mutual aid from the surrounding fire stations.
Why is that not right?
Let me clarify.
Cameron, explain the difference between mutual aid
Yeah.
and auto aid, because there's.
Yeah, let me try to help on that. There's a difference between automatic aid and mutual aid. Automatic aid is pre-60 closure, we are receiving automatic aid from 94 and 5 into the parts of the city. 60 was running. Mutual aid would come on a larger incident from further out. In option 2, with a like-for-like resource, both automatic aid and mutual aid would be in place. In option 3, automatic aid would not be in place. Therefore, Station 60 would be essentially on an island all to itself, with no help from Stations 5 and 94, or 97. However, mutual aid is still on the table based on their comment in that letter. That's how I understand that. Did I explain that, Larry, on automatic aid?
But
Yeah, and the difference is, you're locking on 60, 94s and 5s. In reality, when you have automatic aid, and you're in an agreement, it doesn't matter. Those 2 stations could be occupied. It could come 97s, it could come out of Menifee. So the automatic aid means that you will get someone there based on who's available. We're so used to having 94s and 5s because they're on our borders.
Right.
But where we used to work, it could come from multiple jurisdictions that aren't the closest, just because they were available.
If 94 and 5 are busy, then it goes to another station after that. And we don't know when they're,
Yeah, it doesn't lock you into 94s and 5s.
No, I understand that, but I think what was said in here was that we have automatic and mutual aid in number 2 with this agreement, and I don't read it that way. I read it that we have automatic aid for structure and other stuff. And I guess it goes on to page 46 and 53. Option 2 does not include advanced life support services, paramedics. This resource will be available, and what your statement is, this resource will be available from AMR and/or potentially from CAL FIRE on automatic aid and mutual aid responses. Also, that financial model suggests that the city may be unable to sustain a paramedic program. I believe you're correct with AMR, but I don't get where there's anything that says that we're going to get paramedics for automatic or mutual aid, or that they're first due in to Canyon Lake.
that's how I read this.
Mind I yield. Madam Attorney, you know, this mutual aid is legal mumbo jumbo. You know, you have a,
Fire mode.
well, fire mumbo jumbo, but it's part of the law too, as I understand
I believe that maybe you need to explain a little bit more of the difference about automatic happens without a request. Mutual aid can happen, as I understand it from reading the law, with a request, or if you have set up a mutual aid agreement without a request. And I believe that the point the city manager just made to me may be an important one here, which is there's a difference between structural fire coverage and EMS in terms of automatic and mutual aid. So what I think what your consultant is saying makes sense to me. It's how fire people work.
it. Okay, so
Another synonymous-
fire people are making this up as they go, though, on what mutual.
Oh, no, they made it up ahead of time.
And another synonymous word that might be helpful, Councilman, is automatic aid essentially is the next closest, or the closest engine goes, regardless of where they're at and if they're available.
We've already seen in Canyon Lake that happen. I guess it's difficult for me to believe that that Station 94 and 5 will be first in with paramedics and fire, while we have our own fire department. And we have seen what the county will do when we say that we're not contracting with the county and CAL FIRE. We've seen the facts on that, and I can give it to you, that stations 94 and 5 did not come into Canyon Lake. Our response times were 15 minutes plus. They came from where they said they were going to come from the county, from Hemet, Murrieta, Corona, and other places. And that during the July to October period of time, I have the documentation that shows that we had never had a response less than 15 minutes. In fact, it took 10 minutes at one point to get to the fire chief in order for them to talk to him. And I've got the documentation that will show that.
We're a state of emergency. Isn't that because, I don't mean to interrupt, but isn't that because we're under a state of emergency? Basically, they're saying, you guys got nothing, we'll do what we can for you, but when we get to you, that's tough.
That's correct, and I read the same thing into what I read from Hawkins in that letter, that they will give county, we will get county. I've got the first time it was from Paris, and then we had a fire next door at the POA. It took 15 minutes to get here from county, which was happened to be Bear Creek, across from Bear Creek on that is county. It came from county and it came from Corona, station, I think it's station 9 or 7 in Corona, 7 in Corona. It took them over 15 minutes to get here. Every fire that we had, in fact, when there was a cable down on Compass, both Murrieta and Corona declined to come, and a state truck from station 10, a 4-wheel drive truck, came to Compass to take care of that over 15 minutes later. And I read the same thing into this, and I agree with what you're saying, Cameron, under 3, that they have that availability to do that. But I read the same thing in 2, that same sentence is there, so if that sentence is scary, and it's scary in 2 also.
If we go to page 45, I think it might be 53 on your guys. It's the notable characteristics for option 2. If we go to the second bullet on that, automatic aid and mutual aid agreements are likely to be secured as this option provides like-for-like resources. Automatic aid, we start our own fire department in option 2. Automatic and mutual aid just aren't miracles, they just don't happen over it. They have to be negotiated. The bits and pieces to that have to be ironed out. It is an option that's available to the city of that option, according to what our data.
Well, I would disagree.
Excuse me, can I just add one thing in trying to explain this? As I understand it, the difference here is like for like is something Canyon Lake has not had. When you had an emergency declaration, you didn't have anything to
Correct.
trade. But if you have full-time staffing, whether or not, whatever retirement plan they may have, you have something to give the county, and I believe that was one of the lines in the letter that said, basically, we're trading you like for like. Is that?
No.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
That is nice reading that into it. It isn't said, but it's nice for you to read that into it. Because if that was the case, if it was like for like, that it would be the same as number 1. And number 1 says long-term contract with Riverside County, resetting Canyon Lake with level of protection seen prior to Station 60 closure. There's no caveats, there's no anything in that. The thing that I do understand with what you're saying is that the agreements are likely, or could happen, or may happen, are all things that you could say in that. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. If we take a look at this and they don't happen, then we are first in for the entire area. And then do we go back to what happened in July, so that the second in is going to come from Murrieta?
The indication that I get from the correspondence from CAL FIRE is that they're open to agreeing, to negotiating, and at some point securing automatic and mutual aid when there's a like-for-like resource in play. That was not the case during declaration. When CAL FIRE was here, they were playing with themselves.
And my understanding from CAL FIRE is like for like includes ALS, not BLS. We will be the only fire station in the county that has BLS and not ALS, except for Calumet. but that every other station will have ALS. The stations around it will have ALS. And why should they give us this great paramedic service for nothing? I don't get it. And I'm very nervous about saying I'm going to approve a 2A with a likely to be able to do this. So,
Well, I share the same concerns. I mean, if they're, who knows what the hell Cal Fire's interpretation of things are at this minute. And if they're saying like for like, we don't have ALS service, are they going to at some point say, well, no, never mind. We're not going to send our paramedics in because it's not for like for like.
I don't know the
But
answer.
like for like is an industry term, it's standard in any contract that we have struck between jurisdictions as far as responses on automatic aid. Mutual aid is covered under the state. The state of California in 1949 mutual aid act so that we would have fire coverage throughout. The county is required to give us some kind of fire protection. It doesn't say it has to be within 6 minutes. It could be 25 minutes. The idea that when if we do go this route, I'm not going one way or the other here, but what I'm saying is, before this gets launched, someone's gonna have to sit down, write a formal document that we sign off on. And those documents, I can tell you in Orange County, are reviewed annually, and they're redone on the staff level, and then they're either re-signed or adjusted. But like for like is a term that's used pretty much in our region.
Can I ask you?
Okay, if I just finish off that, we know we've had problems with CAL FIRE and wordsmithing and what words really mean. And I just want to say, unless I know that like for like does not mean ALS or non-ALS, that's a huge hole.
I agree. And that's something that, something that needs to be negotiated and something needs to be verified, and something that Ms. Martin would have to clearly go over very carefully. Or Mr. Wall.
Can I ask a quick question as far as response? So I just want to make sure in option 1, 60's out on a fire call and we get another call in. Does option 1 guarantee that if somebody at 94 is busy, they're not going to send somebody from Corona?
With option 1, you end up with essentially the same service you had before.
Okay. that's what I
Where
thought.
the next, if 60's tied up and 94's tied up, within CAD, within the computer dispatch system,
Okay.
the next closest unit would then respond.
Which could be,
Which could be
Which could
Paris.
be anywhere, or it could be leaving inland, it could be, yeah.
So that doesn't change from option 1 to option 2?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same.
no, that's not true.
yes, it is true.
That's not true.
That's, I'm sorry.
That's debate at a different point.
Let's get through can we get through the
Yeah, get
council
through it.
comments and then?
Yeah.
Are you guys through? or-
No, not yet. Questions? Gordon, you had questions?
One is
Okay, you're not, okay.
for a while.
All right. Jump in when you're ready. Jump in. Any other questions?
I've got more.
Don, you want to go first?
Yeah. Couple things. If we set up our own fire department, part of the negotiations, one of the most important negotiations is our mutual aid and assistance programs. Those would have to be clearly defined. My understanding from the people I have talked to do not share your concerns. They made me feel a lot better that we would be, even if we did not have paramedics, that if we had a need, the first person, for example, if we have our own fire department, all of the firemen would be EMT trained. They would probably be the first responders because they're the closest at Station 60. As soon as they get there, they start whatever emergency treatments they can deal with. If they see when they get there that it's going to require a paramedic, they immediately contact dispatch. Now, I may not be doing this exactly correct, this is just my understanding. And a paramedic would be sent, or EMR would be there to transport them, to treat them, whatever. So they don't stop and say, well, wait a minute, the guy's got a heart attack, but you don't have paramedics, so we aren't coming. It just, I have been assured over and over by a number of different high-level fire people that that isn't ever going to happen. So I do not personally have a concern. I think if the mutual aid and like for like and whatever you want to call it, the fire language was carefully negotiated, I think we wouldn't do it unless we were fully covered and fully protected.
Other comments, questions, from council?
Why don't you-
Go, John.
I'm sorry, did you have something? Okay. On page 27, and I didn't check to see what page that was on yours out there, but you talk about the ordinance, the Measure DD. The ordinance states at the bottom of the page, I'm not sure what page you're on.
34?
34. The ordinance states that the city of Canyon Lake wishes to maintain, and we're talking about Measure DD, services the community has identified as priorities, including 911. In the campaign for Measure DD, the city said, revenue from Measure DD will maintain Canyon Lake status as an independent city providing effective 911, paramedics, and firefighter service, as well as maintaining Railroad Canyon Road and other essential services. Paramedics and firefighters in Canyon Lake currently respond to 911 calls in 3 to 4 minutes. Closure of the station the city's only local fire station would extend the response time to as much as 11 to 14 minutes, outside of the safety parameters cited by the American Medical Association.
Where is this in the book? I'm sorry, I lost my entire.
That's on, in yours, it should be page 27 in the bottom. Bottom left, obviously. The part that I said, that the Canyon Lakes said, came from campaign materials.
Right, it didn't come from this. I just want to
No,
clear
no,
that
no,
up. It didn't come from the,
No, it didn't come from that. I'm saying that the city said.
that's the confusion. That's where we all are. It has nothing to do with the book. But
Well, the book says wishes to maintain that, the priorities including 911. The thing that we have is that the city had said that. In my question, and you may not be able to answer, would you say that the city promised paramedics with the passage of Measure DD, and how can we now accept BLS and no paramedics? And I thought what you had said there, you need the extension of the UUT, and just looking at your graph, it's going to be a 50% increase. It looked like what you were saying there is, on that graph, is go from 2 million to 2.5 million, which is a $500,000 increase, which is 50% of what we're anticipating now. And so we're going to go to the people in 4 years and say, we want you to pay twice what you're paying now for the UUT. But when we promised it to you 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and said we're going to do that, we didn't. And we haven't. And that we're giving you BLS that's not giving that heart attack person the medication and things that the ALS can do. I guess it's a statement, not a question for you. You can pass on it if you want.
Should we offer the speaker some water, maybe? You need some water, sir?
No, I'm good. I have Gatorade right here. And I have that right here.
You're standing there with pneumonia, I'm wondering, I mean, I hope you're paramedic. So, give us some instructions.
Thank you
what
for
to
your
do.
question.
this close, you probably get the one
You
outside.
may not want to answer. Okay, on page 27, that's just the remainder of that part.
Well, I
says-
understood your comment to be more rhetorical, that's what I took it. I think that last paragraph probably should have been written where it said this ordinance states in part. I can't answer the question that you had.
Well, it's just,
I don't know
part of
anything
it
about the
it
election
took out of context what DD did and put it in, and didn't say that the important part, I think, why many people, like Nancy out there, was fighting for it, so that they could get the paramedics in Station 60. On page 27, it goes on, the next page, on the top of the page, or from the bottom to the top. However, purpose of this study, an assumption was made that all of the revenue generated by the UUT will be directed towards funding fire services unless sufficient excess revenue is available for other authorized purposes. So all of the other reasons for the tax are no longer valid, and all the tax money should go to fire. That may have a very serious legal problems for the city.
That was a project assumption made at the outset of the project. That was part of this, the initial part of the project, that those funds were, in this financial modeling, were going to be devoted for that.
If that was true, if we went to a ballot for the people to extend this, and all the money was gonna go to that, then we have a special tax. 2/3 majority.
This is an assumption for purposes of his report. It doesn't mean that there would be a change in the status of the UG from a general to special tax. It's simply an assumption because like he had to make an assumption about levels of retirement, you have to start with somewhere.
Well, it's not a legal question, it's a question of what he put down into the document, so I think he can answer for himself, but,
You know, John, I think we could probably save a lot of time here. Clearly, you have a whole stack of stuff that you dug around.
no, I read it, Don.
Well, among what was written. Your goal being, I think I know what it is,
I
but
don't.
your point is questionable.
That's in your opinion, Don, I have my own questions.
Yes, in my opinion, your point is questionable.
Okay, in my opinion, you're just
I-
snowballing this.
I think that your goal is, clearly we cannot afford to continue with the contract with CAL FIRE as it is. Because in a very short time, the taxes will not cover it. We all know that. So we're looking for options for that.
Let's try to restrict this to questions at this point. We'll have plenty of
Can we
time.
do that? But I'm sorry, but I have to say that most of what was just said by John was not a question directed to him that was even in his book. It was out from outside. If we can stick to this and get through this, and maybe we can actually get some answers on what this report is doing for
We
us.
should have plenty of time to have comments at the end. We need to have comments.
Just
Well,
trying
I'm
to-
glad that the other two read it and know what it's doing, because I don't. I read it, and I don't know exactly what it's going to do, and I think there's ambiguities, and there's a lot of concerns written into this thing. And I know Dawn wants to do something, and I'm sorry she cannot allow other people that may have a difference of opinion to express it.
We will have time to express opinion, but at this point, is there questions?
I have a last question. That one of our constituents had brought up at the last meeting. If we have 15 openings for firefighters, there was a question that going through the bid process, the testing process, everything, who is going to do that? Where is it, where is that going to happen? And how long will that take?
Our report indicates the start of the fire department is approximately a 12 to 18 month process. And to answer the question about all those things, those are things that have to be contracted out. An executive person, a fire chief has to be hired, recruitment has to begin, and that transition process, which in that original proposal packet that we provided early on, shows a lot of those transitional tasks and different things that have to be done within the disciplines of starting a fire department. So yeah, a lot of it has to be hired out.
So that can that be done in the next 6 months?
No,
Okay.
12 to 18.
we state 12 to 18 months. As one clear example, equipment, an apparatus. Maybe we could find one tomorrow, but it might also take 9 months to wrap.
I've got just one last question. Your projections, in your projections for benefits, you noted an anticipated 10% spike per year because of health. I mean, what's the reason for healthcare increases? Was there a reason for that specific notation?
Yeah, I believe what he did is he, finance took a 10%, a higher rate of increase on the health benefit side, and a little bit lower on the salary side for that. I think it was back 2 to 3%, and the spikes for health benefits have gone up.
So the assumption here includes a 10% per year increase in health cost.
Yeah.
And
Again, that's an
not-
assumption.
And the corresponding increase would be within that 6 to 12% increase in PERS. If we're comparing apples and apples there.
Probably so.
That's a conjecture, it's not a fact.
Well, the issue is, you know, in my mind, so I don't want to be argumentative here at this point, but the issue in my mind is that I think we can certainly anticipate PERS to carry forward those increased in medical costs.
It is at a much higher rate.
Probably, I think so, much. Any other questions at this point?
I'm done for now.
Okay, I don't have questions.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I just have a comment. This has been a pretty comprehensive study that's been put forward. Heard an awful lot of negatives. Now I'm waiting to hear some of the positives that have come out of this, because I think that's what we're all trying to achieve here, is go in the right direction. And this is why I've kept quiet, because these things turn into a free-for-all, and I don't like to participate in those. So I'm sure that there's a lot of members in the audience who are even more qualified than us so-called city council members who are supposed to know everything. And I'd like to hear from them before I say anything further. If that's okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, there'll be a time for council discussion after public
Thank you.
comments. I would ask the public to submit written forms if you can, so that we have a record of who wants to speak. And I would also ask that you address questions you may have to the council as opposed to Cameron directly. If we find that we want to call on his expertise again, we'll call him back. But we would prefer that he have a chance to rest for a little while and nurse the pneumonia before we drag it back in. So let you have a break for a little while, if that's all right?
Thank you.
Kathy Mulcahy.
Hi, can you hear me? Regarding the fire study, I was just wondering why wasn't disincorporation and remaining with CAL FIRE at no extra cost considered as an option? I've lived in Canyon Lake almost 30 years, and prior to us becoming a city, we had adequate fire and Riverside County Sheriff. And it seems to me that nobody's talking about this option, but maybe it's something that we should start to look at. I voted for the UTD tax, entirely expecting to keep our fire station open. I felt that I've been let down, and a lot of people that I've spoken with have also feel this way. And I don't know that I'm going to vote for it again. So as much as I want this to happen, I think that we need to start looking at some other options, even though they're hard options and they're maybe not the, you know, what we want to see. But I think we need to open our eyes and really look at disincorporation and going back to CAL FIRE. If we did do that option, I think that we would have the automatic and mutual aid, we'd have our paramedics, and we'd have our fire.
To answer your question, the reason that they only addressed it this way was because we specifically gave them instruction that they have to consider 60 open. If we, if 60 closes, that's when the county takes over, 60 is going to close. They've told us in previous years that they have no intention of keeping 60 open for just for Canyon Lake, because it doesn't service anything outside the lake. So it makes sense for them, for their operating budget. We would go back to what you had before, what was happening before it was a city, but that was no 60. So there's the question of mutual aid and automatic aid doesn't really come into play at that time, because if 60 is open, we have that to offer. If 60 is closed, we do not. So that would not be an issue. It certainly wouldn't cost us. Disincorporation costs us.
Right, exactly.
But there are things that we do need to take a bead in the community to find out what level the community wants. That was also in this report several times. It's not an a la carte service, but there are things that we can say we would provide under this amount of money, provide under this amount of money, just what do you want to do? I think sometimes the questions are going to be answered differently from somebody who lives on Strawberry to somebody who lives on Burning Tree.
I understand that.
You see what I mean? And
But I would like, the only thing I'm asking is I just would really like the council to take a serious look at other options. That might not be an option, but
well,
I
if
just
we want
think it
60
has-
open, it's not, so that's what we had to look at.
Right, but, I mean, what would happen if we didn't have 60 open?
That
If
is
we
the
relied
question.
on 5 and 95, I'd like to explore that.
That's
Okay,
what we have
that's,
right
yeah, that's what we're.
Thank you so very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Jack Walmsley?
Jack?
First of all, I think they spent a lot of time on the report. Several things, and I know we don't have time to go over everything, but for instance, in finding one, financial stability and the future of the fire protection at Canyon Lake is unknown, and the level is going to be the subject of where you're going to go. As far as mutual aid and that type of program, and I would take issue with what Tim said, that firemen just saying what they want to say. We're locked in by insurance and OSHA as, on almost all types of responses. For instance, on a house fire, you're going to get 2 engine companies and a truck company. That's automatic in almost all fire stations, and in some areas, depending on the type of houses, you may get 3 engine companies and a truck company. So that's already set, and the guys that are working in that station, when that alarm goes off, and you know that, you know what you're responding to. And if you don't have an agreement, we don't have an agreement now, but that's one of the major things that you're going to be faced with, is that agreement as to how you're going to get protection, because you're sitting here with 1 engine company, 3 men, which is worthless on a house fire, because you've got the driver, you've got the captain going in to find out what's going on, you got the other guy hooking up the hose, there's nobody to fight the fire. You've got to have, that's the reason almost all areas are running with 4 men. You don't have, in the old days, we ran with 3. I worked for 13 years on a 3-man crew, and it's tough, and what you're doing, you're waiting on the other engine company to get there so you can get some help. But the main thing that I'm concerned about here is the fact that we're now looking at what Cal could possibly provide for at a cheaper rate. And I think that we really need to sit down and look at that. For instance, I look at this map, and the gentleman that has made the survey on the response time, and he's figuring Station 5 coming from the location that it is now. For several years, we've talked about moving 5s down to Eastport. If we move 5s to Eastport, our response time's within the NFPA requirements. They're coming in, and you can drive from Eastport to the campgrounds in less than 10 minutes. And that's not a bad response, not as good as these, as maybe 60, but we can't afford that. So we've got to look at something else. And I would say that it would be, as long as we're looking at things, take a look at probably helping CAL FIRE build a station right outside of Eastgate, and the response coming in takes care of that area. 94s, I've had 94s to my house for my wife a couple of times. 60s couldn't make it over to my house. I don't get a response from 60s. I get a response from 94s because it's set up that way and has been for many years. So I think that we need to really look at what is available, and I think that you can sit down and talk with John, I call him John Hawkins because I know him so well, but it's Chief Hawkins, and I'll guarantee you, I think in 30 days we get an agreement. And if you guys can't get it, I think there's a couple of us out here that could get it. I'm talking about an agreement with reference to you staying with CAL FIRE. You eliminate the problem with all of the things that we're throwing at our manager. He's got to get in the hiring business, and then we got to figure out how to pay for that. And we're jockeying back and forth, trying to figure how we're going to get enough money to make that payment.
Just to be clear, Jack, you're proposing that Station 60 remain closed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We stay with
And only, Kim, only if you have an agreement with moving 5 down to 8 Park. I mean, that eliminates the major problem as far as response time is concerned. The gentleman that done the report, I know he didn't look at that, but I think that's something we should look at. And then you've got something solid to sit down and talk with CAL FIRE. You eliminate having to hire people or trying to run a Mickey Mouse fire department with volunteers, you know. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Jack. Other people request comment?
Art Femister?
Good evening. Good evening. So I wanted first to add, I had a couple of things I'm probably not going to be in agreement with. What a surprise. I know some people are putting their head down curious again. But the first thing I do want to compliment everybody on, and I do mean this, is that you did a great job on hiring the right person. The last time we looked at doing something ourselves, maybe not so good. I think this gentleman definitely knows his stuff on that, said I was involved in Mickey Mouse volunteer, but I know what you meant by that, with the Riverside County Fire Department for 7 years. I'm not the expert, you gentlemen certainly are on that, and he certainly is, but I would say everything inside here, you could probably, you know, give a massage, he definitely knows what he's talking about, so I'm very happy to see the study, because he's telling like it is. I said at the last meeting on that, it's gonna take 12 to 18 months, and voila, here it is on that. So the part I don't understand, and maybe it's a rhetorical question on here, is that all the talk about, you know, details, whatever, it all goes out the window. We have 13 days to give CAL FIRE a decision whether we're going to continue. And then we only have 6 months left on that contract if we don't continue. We can't start a fire department in 6 months. What's there to talk about? We have to extend the contract. And if someone on the council is saying, don't worry about that, Art, when we run out and we go into emergency services mode again or like that, we'll work it out. They have to cover us because we pay taxes. I've heard this before. No. I tell you right now, I know some people on CAL FIRE, and I'm not quoting them, but them as individuals, not CAL FIRE, look at us as a bunch of buffoons when we're in that emergency services mode on that. Saying, Jesus, you guys are a bunch of rich people, which we're not all, but we're viewed that way. You won't pay your bill, we gotta come bail you out, and that's the reason why we get what we get on that. So I don't know what we're even talking about here, because we can't do it in 6 months. 18 months is probably more realistic, so we have to extend the contract. I don't know how, there's nothing else we can do, but that said, on that, the one thing I would ask on that, I'm not going to challenge anybody because I'm trying to be polite on this, but that statement of the $100,000 that Riverside County quoted us for dispatch services, I'm sorry, I never got your name, sir, on that.
Cameron Phillips.
Cameron, on that. I don't know if Cameron was told that by Riverside County or someone here was told that.
That was information provided to our interim city manager by CAL FIRE.
Okay, so I'll do this, okay, just put my money where my mouth is. I don't know what it's gonna cost, but if you can get it for $100,000, I'll write a check for $100 to any charity in within the city of Canyon Lake. I might as well make that $10,000 because you cannot get dispatch services for $100,000. You're talking about the entire CAD, RMS system, dispatchers, 911 PSAP. Aaron knows. Aaron was a city, you know, his dad was a retired firefighter. I was thrilled to hear this. You cannot get that for $100,000. That's not going to happen. So that number's out the back.
Are you talking about a contract? We would not get a contract with CAL FIRE for dispatch for that amount of money?
No, I guarantee you're not going to. Not if we start our own fire department for $100,000. They're going to do all the communications. I'll just put my money. If it is, I'll write the check. You, all 5 of you get together and say, Art, this is the charity you want to go to. That's how confident I am. And the reason is, when I did my little research or a little ta-ta on starting the police department, City of Tehachapi Police Department was paying $480,000 a year about to Kern County on that for their dispatch services on that. was one of them on there. I don't remember the exacts. I didn't bring my notes with me. I wasn't expecting that, but I just think it's going to be probably a lot more. But I could be wrong, and I'll pay. I'm willing to pay to be wrong on that. And if I am, then I'm happy. And I'll apologize too on top of that. The other part on that, and again, I'm not going to quote on that. I don't think we should be counting on grants for anything. I teach a class to firefighters and police departments on how to get grants or written grants. It took me 6 years to get a lousy $50,000 grant from the Department of Justice. Anybody says that, anybody tells you you can get a grant to start a fire department, is going to charge you for that, and they're not going to do a contingency because they're going to take your money and you're not going to get. There's just no grants. People aren't starting. There's not a mass problem. Grants address problems. We need POP. Problem-oriented policing. We need to put more cops out there. Let's reduce crime. The federal government gives you money to do that. The federal government say we have a mass problem in the United States of no fire departments covering people. We need to start fire departments. Here's grant money. There's not grant money out there to start fire departments. And if there is, you're not going to be guaranteed. I mean, we should not count on any grant for anything. We should look at worst case scenario. We have to pay for it all, just as a suggestion. So, but I'll let go with that. I don't want to keep rambling up there. I just don't understand the part though about if we have to give notice in 13 days and we only have 6 months left and it's going to take 12 to 18 months, then what are we going to talk about? Let's give the extension, buy some time, let this gentleman come back in. He loves it down. Well, no, bring your buddies down from Oregon, do your 120-day study, and if we can do our own fire department, I'd love to do it. You got my 1,000% support. It just needs to be done, validated. So I'm done on that. And in his report, obviously, that's his recommendation. We paid the expert for that. I'll just let it go with that. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is where I'd like to say something.
All right.
And not necessarily to Art, but thank you for the information.
Mr. Mayor, I want to add that I can answer his question with reference to
Just a
the
moment.
$100,000 and where it came from.
Hold on, Jack.
Just a moment, Jack, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm going to let you talk in just a second. Ever since this process has started, I've been a little concerned that we were compressed for time. And I agree with what Art said, and I think probably most of the council will agree that we're running out of time. And I want to take you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Walmsley, but I want to take you up on your offer to help us negotiate with Mr. Hawkins for perhaps another year's contract so that we have a little breathing time. I've tried it before. Some of the people here in the council know what we went through dealing with John Hawkins. If you have some in, please, I've been negotiating for a long time on other items. Thought I was pretty good, but I couldn't negotiate with John Hawkins. So, but I am in favor of looking for an extension. We have till the end of this month. We don't have time to be able to do that. If we can get the contract at the same price that we just got this past one for, it would be a perfect solution for right now. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue investigating, putting our own department together. So I thank you for your help.
I would accept the challenge, but
It's not a challenge.
You have to be able to give something to get something. And when
But pay money, that's called using something.
Cameron, you had a comment?
I was addressing the communications.
Okay, well, that's, I've kept quiet. That's where, I'll let the rest of the public talk again now.
Could I?
Or whatever, I'm sorry, thank you.
Did I answer where that $100,000 came from?
Let's finish.
Yeah, let's.
And then we'll let you go.
The $100,000 was where.
Wait, let's wait.
Okay.
We have more speakers?
Yes.
Jeff Hewitt?
Jeff Hewitt, 955 Roberts Road, Calamasa, California. Well, it's the first time I've been on this side of the dais in about 5 years. I love Canyon Lake. I don't like having to show my ID when I'm digging a swimming pool in here, and every time I go through with my dump truck, I see the same guy every 10 minutes. I got to show my ID again. And I'm wondering if response times could go down if the fire engines didn't have to all pull out their IDs when they're coming in with the sirens on. Okay. You're not going to like what you hear from me. We flew under the radar since our inception. In fact, we are attached to the hip. Our histories go back, I believe we were incorporated at exactly the same time. We're the second smallest city in Riverside County. I believe you're the third smallest city. And
Can you let people know who you are? I'm not sure, but oh, did you?
Well, I'm the mayor of Cal Mesa.
Thank you.
That's like, you know, there was a goat and a chicken, and the chicken had priors, so I don't know what's wrong with the goat, but anyway. But the thing is that, again, it is awfully hard to start your own fire department with that. It's very tough, with all the rules. And the firefighters unions have done a very good job of spending a lot of money on their legislators and on everybody else and the county supervisors to make sure they're well protected. And I can't blame them. That's what every union is for. They try to get all the best stuff they can for their members. However, unfortunately, public employee unions, and not just firefighters, are different from private. And that's that they negotiate with the very people that they put into power. Now, we flew under the radar. We've had 2 on our one engine since inception in 1990. We have never had inferior service, although it's only basic because we don't have a paramedic. We sit 500 feet from the county line from Yucaipa. And for mutual aid, oh my gosh, we give them a lot, and nobody's ever complained, said, hey, you only got 2 firefighters. My God, this guy's gonna die. We have 1 structural fire every 3 years. We don't need firefighters. We need medical personnel that happen to know how to fight a fire too when it does occur. Now, wildfires are a different thing. In CAL FIRE, if you look at the history, it started as the state's agency to fight these big wildfires. Southern California and the eastern coast of Australia are the only 2 areas that have these Santa Ana type winds and have these huge fire dangers. But that's different. What CAL FIRE does is they go ahead and we contract with them and they act like they're the only one in town, and they say one size fits all. Well, we were flying under the radar, and then somebody, one of you wise Alex, pointed out that Cal Mesa only has 2. And we were happy with 2. We kept our budget balanced. We can't raise taxes. We can't do anything. We're a very simple city. And so now we're going to face a showdown. And I don't want you to associate yourself with me because I'm going to be public enemy number 1. And I would invite you. You've only got 13 days or whatever it is, so but I would invite you to have Chief John Hawkins, who is not elected like the rest of us are, and really not beholden to anybody except the supervisors. And sometimes I wonder about that. But if you look at the city councils of Vallejo, Stockton, and San Bernardino, if you ask them, if we would have stood up against this and said, enough is enough, every time they open an opening for a firefighter, there are hundreds of people that show up, half of which could be good firefighters. And if you asked them, would you go back and do it differently? Every one of those electeds would say yes. We have to take responsibility for this. Fire and safety is one of our most important. Public safety is our main, they entrust us with it. And it's 1/3 of our budget. And if we can't make it fit, I'll tell you what, when we said we're not going to 3, they said ALS, BLS, ALS, you want a paramedic? Then go ahead and put one of our 2 as a paramedic. That costs $23,000 per body, $23,000. That's the quote we got. I don't know if you guys, they think you're richer or something. Don't get me started on what they charge the Indians. But I'll tell you what, this is the path I'm going down, and my council's behind me. And by the way, you guys get along a lot better than most councils I've ever seen. That's good that you have different ideas and such, but what I'm saying is, if you want to talk to me, call me up. I will tell you what we're doing. I have been studying this. Oh, by the way, studies show that between 4 and 8 or 9 minutes, mortality almost is the same. If you can get there before 4 minutes, it's really important. But most catastrophic things happen in those first 4 minutes. So when they talk about going from 7 to 6 minutes, it's no difference in survivors and stuff. So there's a lot of things we need to do. We need to change fire, make it, we're not going to livery stables to tune up our cars anymore. Let's make this work. Firefighters are great people and everything, but we gotta start leading and not, when was the last time you were invited to be in those negotiations? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We appreciate you coming down and sharing your wisdom with us.
Missed you at the league meeting Monday, though, in Temecula.
I know, I've been bugging me about that.
Okay, go ahead. I understand Don wanted to comment to a comment that was made earlier.
This is a little premature. I was going to do this at the end of the meeting, but since it was,
Oh, we have to finish public comments.
Well, we're not doing comments yet. We're still in public comments.
Nancy Carroll?
To lower that mic a bit.
Good evening, Council. I don't come as often as I used to, but this is a real important issue. So I have to say that it was very interesting hearing from you. And as John always points out, when I get up here, I'm always wanting that paramedic. It sounds like it's working okay without that paramedic. We do have AMR. We do have AMR, and they can and do come in. I've been carried off in that ambulance more times than I'd like to say. So I can tell you that by the time AMR gets there, you're packed up, ready to go. And by the time they take you where you need to be and get their gurney back, our firefighters and our paramedic who work in our neighborhoods don't have that kind of time to sit there where AMR sits there literally until you get off their gurney. And that might be an hour or 2 hours till they can get their gurney back. And they stand right next to you and almost kind of take care of you until they can get their gurney back. So we really, really still need that paramedic. At least, you know, the only person they didn't save lately was Che. But me, they've saved me many times. They've started my IVs. They've given me the medicine I needed. And the AMR, when they got there with their paramedic, all they did was transport. And one comment that you made, we need to, and Jordan said the same thing, we need to sign up with CAL FIRE until we can get our own ducks in a row. So we don't have very much time left, so we need to think about getting that done and keep working on what you're working on until we can figure it out and get it going. But I don't think we don't have the opportunity to skip all that and keep waiting for another 12 to 16 months to get all of our ducks in a row. And I think we really need to go back to CAL FIRE and take Jack with you and hammer it out until we can at least keep going until we can figure out what we're doing with ourselves. And I'm not giving up on the paramedic.
Thank you. Okay, quick comment?
Just a quick comment to Nancy. Nancy, I think one of the things that you said is correct. I think since the break between July 1st and September 30th, 94 and 5 are doing a great job with their paramedics. As I understand it, in 90% of the cases, that they are there and administering the vital medicines long before AMR shows up. And so we really do owe a debt of gratitude for 94 and 5 coming back and doing a great job for us.
More public comments?
Last one, Larry Green.
Larry?
Yeah. Well, a lot's been said. I'll get over here real quick. Larry Green, I think most of you know me. the comment made by the mayor up here, I gotta have a little bit of comeback as far as how important response times are. If you live over on Strawberry or way over on the other side, and 97s is coming into you because 94s and 5s out, it's important. And I don't know what the 4 to 8 minutes, but I'm an ALS or a BLS and an American Heart instructor. And after about 5 minutes, unless you've got citizen, hands-only CPR, which is the first link in the chain of survival, your chances of survival after 6 minutes is pretty low, almost non-existent. With citizen CPR and then the intervention of ALS, BLS, and all the other parts of the system, goes up. The other part is the time temperature. Again, 5 minutes has been our benchmark. It's done in books, a lot smarter people than me. But a couple things that haven't been addressed, and I know Cameron has done a good job of trying to cover all the costs. But in this document, there's a couple of things that, first of all, CAL FIRE, we do not have 3 captains. We may be paying for 3 captains, but at Station 60, 1 captain, and then when that captain was off duty, they would bump the engineer up or rotate somebody in, so you didn't have 3 captains. So our staffing level for our model is at a higher level. I really think a couple of things. Some people have the assumption that the utility tax, because we made the attempt a couple of different times to do a measure that was targeted specifically for emergency services, i.e. fire, police, and paramedics. Fire and paramedics are connected. Both those measures failed. We went the route of putting it on the easy way, or the easier way, because of the number of votes that we failed each time it passed. But there still is an assumption that UT could be used for medical people, paramedic, i.e. So I do think maybe a survey of the community of what they're expecting. I know the model we're seeing, and we've talked about it, and what we can afford. But I think that will give us a place to work from. But we only have 13 days. And then we got a lot of stuff that in this report, such as fleet management. We talked about communications. Okay, communications is one thing. I know, Jack, we popped 100,000, but that doesn't cover your radio frequencies and some other things. Whose CAD system you're going to use, whose geofile you're going to use, are we going to contract with them? So there are a lot of other things that are periphery, as well as the support staff, city staff, unless all fire staffs take care of negotiations, human resources, grievances, those kind of things. So I hope that all those will be looked at, because the bottom line is, to run an organization, you got to have all the parts. And I think 13 days, we're really kind of on a fast track. So I hope we could get something decided, but I think we probably will have to look at what our next option is until we can implement this if we so decide to do so. So thank you. I had a lot of other questions, but everybody's answered it. And I'd like the mayor from Calamasa, welcome to Canyon Lake.
Go ahead, Jack.
I walk up there.
You gotta do it. You gotta take it back, Jack.
Got to pay the price, Jack.
Okay, answering the communications, several years ago, we had a group that done a survey with reference to fire, as all of you know. And my job was communications. And so the approach that I took was the cities that are now using communications like Corona, Hemet, Marietta, all have their own communications. And I sat down with their city manager, sat down with their chief, and we went over, I said, well, if you do our dispatching for us, what are you going to charge us for that? And that's how that $100,000 came up. It was kind of an average. As I remember, Corona was about 110,000. Marietta said they would take over our dispatching, and that was around 100. Hemet wanted about 120. one of the things and big cost that came about in that particular request was the fact that you need repeater stations, because we're kind of in a hole here. So the repeater stations coming out of Corona, if we use their system, I think there was 2 of them, and those repeater stations were about, 70, 80,000 apiece. So there was a one-time expenditure there, but then from then on, they would do our dispatching for us. So that's where the $100,000 came in. We wouldn't be supplying any personnel. It would strictly be taking care of that. And CAL FIRE, I know when I talked to John, he was pretty close with the same amount, same cost. We didn't get into details about it because I'd already had 3 bids on it, you know. So the gentleman was talking about 400,000 or so, but that's a whole crew to do the whole thing, and we would not be able to do that. We would have to go in with the other units and have them do the work for us. Yeah, that's where the 100,000 came.
Thank you, Jack.
The 100,000 that, actually, I wasn't aware that you had done.
I didn't hear it.
Actually, I wasn't aware that you had done this separate thing, but the 100,000 number that we used was Ariel. I asked Ariel to research various dispatchers to see what the average cost would be, and she did. And I don't have a list of those she contacted. I'm sure Marietta was one of them.
Ariel and I talked a lot about that.
Okay, and what she came back with was that the CAL FIRE was the least expensive, and it would be right around 100,000.
That's correct.
So,
They indicated that, and it's simply because we don't have to have all the personnel back and the radio. One of the big costs that you probably don't realize is the fact that you got to have your own. And I'm lost for a word, but anyway. Radio frequency.
Yeah,
Remember that.
they changed to a.
Yeah, if you start doing it yourself, you gotta have your own frequency, and by working in with them, we didn't have to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.
Do we have, I forgot, I do have a public comment from a person who's not here. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
This was emailed to me and I asked him if he wanted me to read it, and he did. From Barry Talbot. Deeply regret I can't make this most important meeting. The details seem to lack the desired certainty and on cost/benefit factors and may not include benefits from a reasonable increase in property tax revenue. Overall, a decision must be made, and 2B seems best possible to me. I'm not terribly worried about the September CAL FIRE deadline. If we show solid progress in establishing our own department, they will certainly give us some leeway. And that was just a public comment that I needed to make sure I put in.
Are there any other public comments?
No.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. Do you think, we're talking 12 to 18 months, we have 6 months, that means October, they're gonna give us another year, they're gonna they'll play with us for another year?
I'll address that.
I'd like to see that needs to be in writing. If we're taking the word of anybody who says that, we're out of our mind.
I will address
Okay,
that.
I'm sorry.
Any other public comments?
None at this time.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't think we're at a point where anyone would be wanting to make a motion, so I'd suggest we move directly into council comments at this point in time. Without objection?
Well, I would like to ask one more question.
Sure.
To the city manager. I had, in a meeting with the city manager, I had asked him to have for us a separate option to know that whether it's 1, 2, or 3, that we could have an option for 4, and so that we would know tonight whether CAL FIRE would extend the contract that we have today in the system that we have today for another year.
We don't know at this time, based on the agreement that we have. It says right there, under the term, section B, 6 months prior to the date of expiration of this agreement, the city should give county written notice as to whether city intends to establish its own municipal fire department or whether they wish to negotiate a new 1-year cooperative agreement for fire services.
Well, it depends. Can I discuss?
Go ahead.
it depends on what the cooperative agreement is. Now, Todd Williams, a battalion chief for John, 3 years ago, came to this council, and John stood over there, Chief Hawkins, and said that we propose the worst of all possible things, but the best of the worst. And that's what we have today. And that part of that proposal was that we would go on after the first year and determine what the percentage of use is from Lake Elsinore and Menifee, and then redistribute the money that way. So that was a proposal from CAL FIRE. And so, you know, whether they would consider doing that extension for 1 year as an agreement with that, I would really like to know.
Yeah, well, initially I asked for just 30 days since I was new, and basically the county told me, sorry. And so the council said, as they said, the council has had enough time, we need to know by the end of the month. What I'd like to propose in front of you is a fourth option that the study doesn't show. Based on the services we're getting now from the county through CAL FIRE by using stations 94 and 5. What I would like to explore is by being able to keep that contract, being able to negotiate a long-term contract, but that's predicated on the fact of negotiating. I'd like to negotiate with AMR and house them in Station 60, and they would be first responders for all medical aid calls, since we saw that medical aid is 95%. That would give us the medic service we have. They're on a call, then obviously when the CAL FIRE, the closest CAL FIRE station backfills there. So I'd like to discuss that with AMR, and we would be able to house them, you know, in Station 60, probably no cost. My understanding is they're bedded down just across the parking lot. They'd be able to save costs there. They'd also be the first in on medic service. By doing that, we can probably keep our contract with CAL FIRE the way it is. And I also would need to discuss with the city managers of both Lake Elsinore and Menifee if they're still amicable to working out the cost sharing.
We'll have to wait at this point. Personally, I agree with you, but we've kind of been down this road before, and I'm not sure how successful we were before. And I just think that we're running out of time, so we've got to do something, and we can't afford to well, I think venture off in that direction and have it turn out to lead nowhere.
Right. Well, I think regardless, we're under the gun anyway, and we're going to have to extend, and then I'm going to have to contact the county and see about extending the contract based on the services we have now. I think that's probably what I'm going to have to get. But at the same time, by being able to do that, I'd like to. I don't know what was talked about with AMR before, so but I think once I get a handle on that, I think by giving them basically free housing and first shot at the responses at all medics, I think that would probably be a kicker to them, but I don't know. So I need to discuss that with them, but we would still pull the trigger on extending the contract.
Sure, go ahead.
After reading this several times and having a meeting with our new city manager and reviewing all the notes from the past, I've got a file about that thick. I personally came to the conclusion that I would like to recommend, and this was before the meeting started, I would like to recommend to the city council that we do negotiate an 1-year extension. That would give us the 12 to 18 months, which our consultant has recommended it would take to set up one of these other options. Meanwhile, in meeting with our city manager, he had several rather creative ideas that I found fascinating, and they were things that we had not really discussed before, and that would give us some time to look into those options as well as what the consultant has provided us. The consultant, I should use your name, Kevin, I'm sorry. What he's recommended, I think this is serious enough that we need to look at all the options, and there are a couple of other suggestions on the table at this time. I think we owe it to the city and ourselves to pursue those options. One of them was his suggestion that we go back to AMR and discuss with them possibly moving their residents from here in the parking lot. Well, we don't sleep in the parking lot, but they park their ambulances here, and they reside here, don't they, in the shopping center. Offering them to Station 60 at no cost or some small cost. That we haven't gotten into that, and that would be his purview, not mine. But my goal is to get Station 60, get a paramedic here. I mean, that's what I personally, that's the whole idea of this. If there's any way at all that we can possibly get a paramedic at 60, that would be my goal. If we just stay with CAL FIRE, we're not going to have anybody at Station 60. The times seem to be reasonably good. So far, we haven't had any major issues. People seem to be fairly comfortable with what we currently have, so that would be option one, would be to stay with CAL FIRE, not have Station 60 occupied. But that's not what I personally want. I think Vicki agrees with me. I think probably the whole city council agrees that that would be the optimum choice. So if we can look at some of these other suggestions, our city manager, by the way, has very good fire experience. He has a father that spent his whole life in fire, and he's had very good exposure. He has his own personal consultant. And as I say, he came up with some very creative ideas that I think we need to explore. Obviously, it's going to take time. We've got a cliff. We can't fall off of it. We have to try and negotiate for an additional year. They have expressed in the past that they would be willing to do this. So if we notify them now, that gives us 18 months. That's what Cameron suggested it would take. So we would have to move fairly quickly on these other ideas that Aaron has to see if any of those options should be put into the basket with what we have, and then the city council needs to sit down fairly soon and review all the options and decide which way we're going to go, because we have 18 months to do it. But definitely, I think probably the council would agree that we need to extend the contract for another year.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just one comment. I think we have looked at this before in regards to having Station 60 have a medic in there sometime. AMR was brought up, and perhaps Betsy, you can refresh my memory, but it seems to me that AMR, we were told, had to be on a public street, couldn't be in a private location. I don't remember exactly what that kind of was a deterrent.
That was their
In
response.
the course of exploring your fire options, I think the city and council and your staff have been told a variety of things. I think that it's possible that AMR is in a different situation as they were earlier. I think your manager is asking that you give him the ability to reach out to them. And with the council's understanding, that's what he's doing. At the same time as he's asking that you instruct him or ask him to give notice to the county of the second option under the term.
I agree. It's a terrific idea. I didn't mean to slow you down. I just wanted to mention that that was a stumbling block at one time, so perhaps that can be overcome now. But please don't let me slow you down. Go ahead.
I don't disagree with any of that. I disagree with going forward with two. I think it's undoable at this point in time. So, and I do agree with the extension. The problem that I run into is part of what Cameron put down there are the next steps that we need to look at. There's a lot of next steps, you know, the sustainability, all of this kind of stuff, no matter which way we go. But that what happens if CAL FIRE says, no, we're not going to extend the contract as we have today? That's scary, because then our options within the next 13 days become somewhat minimal. And so that worries me that, you know, to me, I would say business-wise, we got to have a meeting next Wednesday. to find out what's the status of everything.
Like I said, I can find out if the county decides to refuse service. We have an option, well, then we'll have to go out to bid. I'd ask Marietta for a bid. I could ask Hemet for a bid. And to be honest with you, I'd go directly to the state because it doesn't have, there is not exclusive operating rights in the contract between the state and the county. And there are other cities in the state of California that contract directly with the state and bypass their county fire system. So I would see what CAL FIRE would be able to do for this particular, probably in their Schedule A contract, directly with the state. And if that's possible, whatever gives us the service level you guys are looking for at the best price.
And I think we should exercise every option that we can. It would just scare me to some degree if we're talking about what CAL FIRE did to us when we closed the station, and how they didn't give us service, how we get a state truck here, and how we get mutual aid. And
right, but we're giving them as what they've requested, plenty of notice. And if they want to play this negative PR game, the way you're describing it, then that's on them, because we're trying to work with them.
We played that PR game in June and July, and we lost. So I would be very concerned about that.
At the risk of defending CAL FIRE, since the time that we entered into a settlement with them, we have reason to believe that the relations with them have improved. You have a new manager. I don't want to put words in their mouth. There could be an issue, but there may not be an issue. And I think we need to, until we have evidence to the contrary, assume that they will act in good faith.
But, you know, in case they don't,
We have a lot of experience, yeah.
you know, we've got to make this two-step. You know, it's got to be done real fast.
Right.
I mean, you need to get on the phone with them and see if you can, by the middle of next week, hammer out whether this can be extended another year, current agreement.
Tomorrow, absolutely.
What's that?
Tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow, yeah.
I will make contact first thing in the morning and schedule meetings to see how we can hammer out this one-year
To
extension.
confirm, you are by consensus instructing your manager to contact CAL FIRE and exercise the second option under the term of the cooperative
well, no,
agreement.
because what we want is the same terms as the existing contract.
Exactly. You are instructing and authorizing him to go to the terms, things change. Section 4, which is the term of the cooperative agreement, and contact CAL FIRE to notify him that the city wishes to extend the one-year cooperative agreement on the same terms.
And that, you know,
Although
as
they'll
long as
increase.
it's the same terms. Right.
I'm sure they'll increase your cost, but.
Well, that's not what we're authorizing.
Yeah.
Under the same provisions, though.
Right.
Well,
Basically,
Same service level?
the service level with 60 closed.
Service, no, I'm not going to hand out a blank check here. If we're going to say, you know, strike a
no,
deal, we need some limits. I think that current cost was CPI or something like
Well,
that.
I think one of the things, pardon everybody out there, one of the things that was involved in this process was a division of our fire safety tax. Our fire safety tax comes up, I would think that the county's going to say, we want better. If you're not going to pay us the same amount this year, you got $100,000 more next year, so you can put that into your coffers. I don't think they're going to allow that. So I would say that within the same parameters that we have entered into the contract this year, which may be an increase because of our fire safety.
Right, it'll be based on, I have to look at and see exactly the cost sharing percentages between Elsinore and Menifee. And if the managers of both cities are amicable to that, I'm assuming we'll probably look, we'll look at run data, we'll look at calls.
Last year, CAL FIRE went up 30%. You know, if they decide to play that game again this year, I want nothing to do with it. You know, I mean, we need to make sure that
That wasn't used in this decision-making process. You know, they went up 30%, that was the $1.7 million. They were talking about $1.2 million. We're talking about our fire protection tax that they took. And I think if they would do that, and I think we should just say that we're within fire tax, that we are willing to give that amount of money. If it's more than it was last year, so be it.
I'm not willing, under consensus, to give a blank check. You know, I think
Well,
we
absolutely
need to
not,
establish
so
parameters.
it would be negotiations. We would talk about those in closed session. I would get authority from the council and we'll go from there.
I don't know if we can talk about closed session.
Yeah, it's kind of, should be able to.
Talk about whether.
And I agree with Jordan saying, get on it tomorrow, because if he needs to take it to the Board of Supervisors, they need to have it on their agenda on next Tuesday.
Notice that we want to negotiate that 1-year extension.
Right, but that should do that tomorrow, so that if he's going to take it to the Board of Supervisors, which he may do in closed session, that's next Tuesday. So, you know.
But the way I understand the contract is that provision is on us. So as long as we make notice by, I believe it's the 28th.
The concern I have, the
That's
concern,
exactly what this contract
Contract says.
Right.
So as long as we do notice, I would say by the 28th of the month, we've met the contractual obligations, we're fine. They would have to negotiate.
I can just envision them saying, nope, what we really meant was you're gonna have to put in a full person, open up the station.
Then that's fine, and then we have options.
Well, that's the next step. We need to have that resolved within a week, whether we can, is that?
We understand that you'll be having another meeting on the 29th.
Boy, that sucks.
Well, that's the one with Congressman Calvert.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So
That's the day before we have to make it, that,
No, that's the day.
that's the day, that would be
that was the
the
30th.
I think we can push it.
which is the 28th.
Thoughts on the council on do we have some consensus to let them go ahead and try to negotiate some kind of a deal on extension, come back to us
That's
on
fine,
29th?
that's what Bill's our obligation under the contract, so we're.
I mean, I should know if we can start negotiations quickly. I would say within less than 60 days, I would know whether or not that they're going to try to put the screws to us. And if so, then, you know, worst case, that they want us to play that game again, fine, we can do another emergency declaration.
I don't
Go
think
straight to the
it's a
state.
position where we can wait 60 days.
Well, no, I mean, we'll start negotiations, I would say, within probably a 2-month period. We should know where the county is going to fall. And that still gives us another 4 months.
But now we're into a contractual issue where we've given them, you know, the piece of paper that says, let's continue. And they're gonna, you know, opens up all those legal cans of worms.
And leave it up, it's just the ability to negotiate.
Right.
We don't have to accept their terms.
The scary thing about that
You
is
need
that
to
we
give a
litigated that
notice.
in June.
You need to
And
give
lost.
a notice, yes. You need
The
to
judge
give,
says they didn't have to give us the extension.
Okay.
Okay.
you need to give a notice that you are not terminating the contract to form your own department, that you need to extend this. The time to give the notice, we are being generous in our time frame. We would like to give it the 28th. It seems to me that if your manager receives contraindications in his conversations with them between now and your meeting on the 29th, for example, that it gives you the opportunity to try to begin to address that then.
Okay. If the notice is not that we will proceed in the existing terms, then we've got to get together and talk about things. If it's under some other sort of terms, you know, we'd have to rescind our notice or do whatever we had to do. Because we you know, can't let them blackmail us into an untenable position.
No, that's not my intention.
Well, I know it's not your intention.
No,
We've been
it's
playing with these guys.
No, I understand. It's the same, I understand.
Mayor, we still have one person that wishes to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
Nancy Horton?
Nancy Horton, 30098 Red Barn Place. Former city council member, former mayor. The reason that we were told that AMR would not consider moving to Station 60 is that it has a regional contract. Its contract is not with the city. Its contract is with the county. And it's part of a regional network. The regional network requires it to be at the town center so that they can move up units when they have to. If the city of Menifee has a crisis and they have their units busy, they move one of the units from the town center to Menifee. If the city of Lake Elsinore has a crisis and one of their units is deployed, one of our units moves to the city of Lake Elsinore. They have to be in a location where they can get to the next crisis within a very short time. From Station 60, they can't do that. They're not close to any major highways. They're not close to any regional network. And that was what we were told repeatedly. Second thing is, I wanted to talk about the unincorporated area for a second for Ms. Mulcahy. I've heard this from people before who've lived here a long time, and they said, well, we used to be unincorporated and it was just fine. We had enough service from the county. There's two misconceptions about that. The first is, at the time, our city wasn't as large as it is now, and secondly, the county took a long time to get here. It is not going to be Station 94, Station 97, Station 5 that responds. It will be Good Hope, Riverside, somewhere in Paris, another county station. That doesn't give us the service that we need today. We need to reopen Station 60. The people who live in the Longhorn Big Range corridor are really feeling that we're playing Russian roulette with their lives. The time to get to them from Station 97 is the optimal is 8 minutes. It's really more than that. We know it takes. I've heard John Hawkins say to me, he hates coming into Canyon Lake because you have to go so slowly on our streets. If you're on a major thoroughfare, you can go 35 or 60 miles an hour. But if you come into Canyon Lake, you have to go 20 or less because you've got kids on bicycles, narrower streets, etc. So the time of response for us, Longhorn, Big Range, is longer than any other part of town. Yes, we haven't had a crisis yet, except one where the lady died. But we haven't had a crisis yet where we have had no response. We may have that crisis anytime soon. And we live here too. And we need the right to have a paramedic come to our house. And lastly, I want to say, as being one of the 3 people on the council who worked very hard for the UUT, there are people in this city of vision, integrity, and courage who will work very hard for the passing of another UUT. We did it before. We can do it again. I know their names. They will work. There are people in this city of vision, courage, and integrity.
Thank you, Nancy. Any other? Okay. So we have consensus of the council to move forward in the direction of requesting an extension, getting back to us with the terms of that extension to find out if we continue to have consensus. Where expectations are that the extension is very similar to the current contract we have with CAL FIRE. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Is that consensus?
Mayor,
Okay.
I'll volunteer to help Aaron if he wants me to help him.
Welcome to visit with Jack. And see.
Okay.
I'll call John in the morning if you want.
Okay, moving on to city manager comments. Do we have any are there any other issues that need to be discussed on this?
We will return to this on the 29th as necessary.
If necessary, we'll bring this back at the 29th meeting.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make one comment regarding this whole package. It's my opinion, just, I don't know whether I'll be around when this is all decided. So I'm just gonna say, it's my opinion right now, that if we don't have paramedic services out of Station 60, we don't have a UUT that's gonna pass. And so if you can't figure out a way of getting a full-fledged paramedic in there, service people, we're not gonna get enough support out of UUT to get it passed again. So, my opinion. And so, in which case, I think even that's iffy. We better start looking at what it means to not be a city, and not let that possibility just kind of drag out there through 2020, and then all of a sudden say, oh, we're broke. We should be thinking about it beforehand. What's that? Okay, city manager comments?
I think I've said enough.
Okay. Council comments? Are there any council comments?
I would just like to thank Cameron for a job well done. Thank you for coming out of your sick bed. I know how miserable it is to have pneumonia and have to keep going. And speaking for all of us, I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Adios.
I was gonna say, because I know you're hard, I just walked aside and I